Today, we're going to do another super Q&A here. The footage in the background is, I think, fairly interesting. As a lot of you who are watching me on Twitch know right now, I've just kicked up a new series where we're trying to defeat Zaitan under incredibly difficult restrictive rules. And it got me thinking about ways to earn experience and the ways that mounts have affected exploration of Corteria. So essentially, what you're looking at in the background is me trying to find optimal routes through maps in terms of unfogging areas, collecting POIs, collecting waypoints, and also just progressing through the maps as fast as possible. And most of it revolves around climbing to high places on the Springer to then glide as fast as possible on the Griffin. And I'm not necessarily good at it, it's just exploration and experimentation, but it does show very well, actually, I think, how Path of Fire has changed exploration in Corteria. And I think that that's a side of PF I've wanted to show more of, and, well, you get a bit of it in the background there. So this is a super Q&A. This is a type of questions and answers where I answer everyone, and they can ask pretty much anything they like, unless it's, like, overly personal, and I'll try and give them an in-depth response. These go pretty well. This one's really quite heavy. It's pretty meaty. There's a lot of questions. A lot of people asking questions have got a lot to say. Some of it, as always, are repeats of questions I've answered in the past, but unfortunately, that's just going to be a thing. So hopefully we've got some interesting answers, and I will run through. If you guys want your own questions to appear in a super Q&A like this, you can join on Patreon. I kind of live my life by Patreon, so it's super important to me beyond anything else. And you can get in on the next post when it goes live. I'll be doing a regular Q&A next week, but there's a link in the description where you can go submit your questions and do all of that stuff and just see if you're interested. And if you are, well, it will be awesome to see you over there. There's lots of other perks too. Anyway, let's get on with the questions. First of all, 7 days ago, we have Ryuk, who says, I don't know if you've heard about the outrage against EA for putting Darth Vader behind a 40-hour grind in the new Battlefront game and offering a shortcut for money. You have talked about long-term rewards and goals. I think without the shortcut for real money, this would be a good idea. Playing as Darth Vader will feel extremely rewarding after spending a lot of time on getting it, but I still think that the community outrage would have been very good because people often don't like to work for a goal anymore. Any thoughts? I don't know what you mean when you say would have been very good, so I think you are right that a lot was getting confused, especially in the EA debate, between what's not good. Is it grind or is it the fact that we're paying? And obviously the priority focus should be on the fact that people were being heavily encouraged to bypass with a huge amount of money. I am kind of one of, dare I say, a classic mindset, where I really do like long-term rewards, and I really do, especially for MMOs, which is what I talk more about. I do think that stuff's important. I do think that quite often for me, psychologically, the harder something is to get, it almost counterbalances itself in how rewarding it feels. Like, I could work really hard for a crappy looking skin as long as that skin is rare. A good example is when the Triple Trouble Worm came out and the devs released some pretty lazy pieces of armor. 3 armor pieces that just had like this green stinky smoky effect on them. They really didn't look that good. They weren't that interesting, but they were really rare. And I grinded on the worm for ages until finally I got a piece just because I cared about standing out. And so, like, I have that thing going on with me. I guess a lot of gamers don't. A lot of people, especially, and increasingly so it seems, want rewards faster and faster and faster. That's not exclusive to the MMO space. So while you may have a point that if we ignore all the micro or macro transaction stuff, if we put that to the side, just the idea that Darth Vader would be unlocked after a ridiculous amount of hours played, I think people would have grumbled about that anyway. I think I would have seen the silver lining, and a few people would have seen the silver lining, but other people would have seen it in manipulative in its own way. Manipulative in trying to extort play hours out of you, for no real tangible reason and stuff like that, which obviously we see in the MMO scene an awful lot. I do have a lot of thoughts on the EA thing, especially from community side stuff. A lot of that discussion ended up on some of the recent streams, because the EA thing hit right after the Mount Gate thing hit. And so we threw our hat in the ring on several occasions. I probably got most egg on my face because I expressed quite a lot of doubt that downvotes, because people who are out of the loop, an EA employee got the most downvotes in Reddit's history for commenting on this. And I expressed doubt that downvotes really mattered, that downvotes could affect EA's bottom line, that the controversy could do anything. And then they actually turned around and they did supposedly at least act like they're making some changes for now. So we will see. That at least was a surprise to me. And people feeling happy about that might even have spurred on a little bit more of what's currently happening with the whole free internet thing and net neutrality. But yeah, we digress. Moving on. Next question. We got Marcus, who says, "Hey WP, I'm currently studying to be an English language teacher in the future. And so recently we talked about different accents in the English language. So my question is, what's your favorite accent? I myself love the Australian accent." Yeah, I have a fondness for Australian accents, New Zealand accents. I actually thought for a while on this. I've paused the recording and thought for a while, because what accent do I like? I don't know whether it's, I would say that I'm attracted to this accent, but an accent I really genuinely enjoy and people don't seem to give much love is like a good, strong, thick, like Indian or Pakistani or Bangladeshi kind of accent. And I'm sure I've just come across as incredibly ignorant because they all probably sound very different. But I really enjoy those accents. I don't know, maybe it's that so many, like, dentists and surgery professionals and people on tech support helplines that have been outsourced and stuff in my life have had that accent. But I've built up all these lovely fond associations with it. And it's maybe a bit weird, but I enjoy it. You know, very recently I was looking at some After Effects tutorials and Vegas tutorials on YouTube. And there's a lot of guys with that accent doing like these small tech channels trying to get viewership. And I find whenever I click on one of those, I tend to listen and watch the whole thing, as opposed to, you know, generic British dude or generic American dude or generic whatever other accent. I always like listen to those guys. So yeah, I don't know what that says about me, but there you have it. That's my favorite accent right now, if I have one. Christopher says, "After finishing POF, the idea came to my head. What if all of Guild Wars 2 had been the quality of POF? And then I began to speculate about how they could do such a thing. Originally, I wouldn't have asked this, but after your latest Q&A, I was surprised to find that there are many others out there wishing the same." Yeah, there really were. I mentioned the idea of overhauling, revamping, adding on to Corteria, and there was a huge response in the comments, which I was extremely happy to see, because I've always felt like I'm a bit of a loner in my desires for that. But it seems as time goes by, the rest of the community is starting to sort of align with that, which is awesome. So Christopher goes on and says, "What if they release Guild Wars 2.5, or called Guild Wars Remastered, dare I say Guild Wars 3? Hear me out before you cry over your Guild Wars 2 progress. Say they did a visual pass / upgrade to the engine, and all the existing assets in the game, improved the core AI and events and dungeons to be on par or better than what it is in POF, fractals and raids. Say this gave them a clean start to iron out all the strange inconsistencies in skills, UI, game modes. The resulting remastered game would be all the content of vanilla Guild Wars 2, Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, all the living story, and maybe the content of a third expansion pack, and charged at $60 for the whole thing. Now, for progression loss, say that once you reach max level in the remastered game, and say you reach X achievement points and finish a quest / collection on the scale of a legendary, at that point you have mastered the new game, and you could import your legacy progress at X conversion ratio, transfer achievement score, your dies, any skins that were kept, gear, character, slots, etc. So you touched on so many things there. We could talk for like an hour or two on all the different specifics of your idea. I'll leave it to the comments to pick at various things of what you've said here. My immediate most prominent thoughts are, what you're asking for, I mean, you go well off the deep end, even saying stuff like add a third expansion pack in the same time and so on. All the work that you're talking about, they may as well just release a new game and just change the set. They're rebuilding everything at that point. That's a new game entirely. And why bag yourself down by still associating yourself with its predecessor? Just, you know, call a spade and get the marketing benefit from that. From your suggestion here, I would say. But the idea of a Guild Wars 2.5 I actually very much like. And I like the idea of doing some fairly sweeping changes to Guild Wars 2, keeping it as Guild Wars 2, nowhere near as far along as you're talking about, and then having some kind of tagline like Guild Wars 2.5 just to reach outside audiences a little bit more and encourage people to take another look. Maybe that's got more power than simply hearing that a third expansion is released or a fourth expansion is released. You know, the more expansions come out, the less exciting it looks from the outside when one comes out. But then if you tell people, oh, we're doing a big 2.5 thing, you know, that might be nice. And we saw Blizzard did something similar, you know, after a couple of box releases for themselves with Cataclysm, right? So I do like this. The thing about losing progression, I don't think is smart at all. I think Guild Wars 2 is Guild Wars 2, and so much of why people play this game is to keep unlocking more stuff on their account and keep building their wealth and the collectibles and stuff. Like, you take that away from people in any capacity, And it's not even, oh, they'll riot, blah, blah, blah. It's that people will quit. It's as simple as that. It wouldn't be like a necessarily hysterical thing. It would just be people would lose motivation to play, and they think, oh, well, screw it. I don't want to go redo all of it again in a slightly twisted version, a slightly repackaged version. And I think that's extremely important to notice. I do not think on any way ever on the planet your suggestion or any middle ground really works, except one, which I am an advocate for. And that's that essentially, yeah, you can rebuild the leveling experience, and you can rebuild how threatening personal story instances are and how the game teaches you things, the speed of leveling, all of that kind of stuff, how we unlock skills, where we get skills. You can do all that kind of stuff. But essentially what I would always be an advocate for is when you click create a new character, it's got Guild Wars 2 Classic on the left, and it's got Guild Wars 2.5 on the right. And if you and in parentheses it will say recommended next to Guild Wars 2.5. And so hopefully you get all your new players who click Guild Wars 2.5 and they get the new experience. And maybe they get a new account shard, like we see with the betas, the beta technologies they do, where they strip your stuff away. But generally speaking, the old version of the game is always there. Everyone's old characters, all their old, everything has to stay. You take it away, people will leave. And maybe slowly over time, you can phase one to become more prominent than the other. But you could never do what you're saying, I don't think. But yeah, and there's a lot more to say. I guess I will leave it there. Moving on, we've got Rick Pradella, who says, hey WP, as always, thanks for your work, love heart, thank you. Recently you tweeted that you were wrestling with whether you prefer to go to Cantha or to the north, to the Blood Legion homelands. I myself am a vet from GW1 and 2. I loved pre-searing Ascalon so much, I could rant on and on and on about how great it was. The point is, in Eye of the North, then we get to explore the Blood Legion homelands, which were similar to pre-searing Ascalon. Grothmar Wardowns, Dalada Uplands, and Sacknorth Valley. Those were my favourite maps by far in Eye of the North. In Guild Wars 2 now, we get to be in Ascalon as well, but the land is still healing. I don't know whether that's true, by the way. I think the land is fully healed, and now the Char have just polluted it again. In certain places. The idea of going to an area as amazing as pre-searing Ascalon and Guild Wars 2 is really exciting, assuming it isn't branded, plus ArenaNet don't make the whole area branded. And the map size was increased before Path of Fire, and now includes the exact area, wink wink, nudge nudge. On the other hand, Cantha, self-explanatory. It's safe to say we all really want to go there, and there's potential for Elder Dragon story with Deep Sea Dragon and Kunavang. Asking where do you prefer to go wouldn't really be easy to answer. I wrestle with it too. So where do you actually think we'll go next through Living World and next expansion? Well, so I got a couple of points. First of all, if all you're interested in is the Blood Legion homelands, you're right. It's kind of the size of a single map. That puts it in scope of Living World, sort of. In terms of assets and building enough interesting new enemies and things to make that map of, maybe not. But it's kind of a possibility, I suppose, now. I would also question, you love pre-searing Ascalon. How much of that is actually, and I really want you to question this, how much of that is actually down to the way it looks? How much of it is genuinely because of green grass and the windmills and stuff in the old limited graphical capabilities that early Guild Wars 1 prophecies had? Because it really isn't that astounding. I think what you really miss and when you get nostalgic about it, and believe me, I feel that too, especially when I listen to the music and so forth, is a collection of the entire presentation of that area. The way that we felt as we were walking in for the first time to a massive new MMO, and the NPCs we met there, and the way that the quests were handled there, and all of that as a package with a heavy dose of nostalgia goggles on top too. But if it really is just that aesthetic that you miss, yeah, maybe they could pull that off in an expansion, definitely, and even perhaps Living World. As to where I think we'll actually go, I think for Living World Season 4, that's the only thing I can actually speculate on. And I would say Corner, I would say Istan, I would say potentially some areas around Djarka or maybe Dizlana. And beyond that, maybe even a ton of other areas. The thing is, this is very hard to predict, and it's not because the story is necessarily a mess, and some people will think that. It's not because they're not good at hinting at stuff that then pays off later, even. To an extent, I'd say they're getting better at that. It's just because the story takes ridiculous twists and turns all over the place. And again, that could be a reason to say that, narratively it's a mess or whatever. But look at how little lead-in and reason we genuinely had to chew on for why we went to the Crystal Desert before Path of Fire. The last 5 seconds of the last patch right before the expansion. They can throw any random curveball and will throw any random curveball to get us wherever the hell we want. So the only way really to speculate about this is not actually in universe, I think, anymore. It's more about the company and the motivations of the company and what the audience wants and stuff like that. Which, yes, I think puts Cantha quite high on the table. Probably higher on the list than the Norn and the, the Blood Legion homelands and stuff, even though maybe they deserve it more. I really do think they might. So there you go. It's a difficult question. That's why I tweet it out. Next, we got MMJSE Clark, who says, "Hey WP, happy to support the channel. Thank you so much." He says, question, Guild Wars 2 comic book or animated series? Okay, I know that will probably never happen, but a girl can dream, right? My thoughts go like this. Large world-building projects like the Guild Wars franchise can translate very well, or god-awfully, into multiple media. And with Guild Wars 2's stunning environments and cool lore, it would be awesome to see another narrative visual incarnation of Tyria as a spin-off. Perhaps in the form of a comic book or animated series. What do you think? Would you have a preference for the more appropriate medium? I don't suggest a live-action movie or series because I think that could be a disaster. It's kind of funny because if I could pick one of those three you've given there, I would go the live-action series or movie. That's probably the one I've thought about more than anything else, especially Nightfall. I think translates very well into a trilogy of movies, Lord of the Rings style, which I've talked about several times in the past. I don't really know much about comics, so I don't know how capable comics could deliver Tyria versus an animated series. Obviously, there's huge budget differences between the two ideas. I would be very cynical that they do well. Because I actually don't think that the subject material matters much for the quality of one of those things. It's more about the direction and the amount of money they spend and how intelligently it's scripted and all of that stuff. I think you can have amazing subject material, and especially a lot of video games have amazing subject material that is butchered in adaptations. And why Guild Wars 2 of all would be any different, I see absolutely no sign for whatsoever. There is that thing, isn't there a thing that to be a writer at ArenaNet you need, or one of the qualifications they want is proof that you've written in TV before or something? So maybe there's that going for it, I don't know. But obviously I can't imagine any of these things happening. I would go the movie though. I'm gonna counter you there, MMJSE Clark. I'm gonna say the movie would be the best. Because if you're going to do it big, baby. Next, we got Mario, who says, "Hey, WP, so this will be a multi-part question. So, there's 3 questions here. I'll answer the first 2. The last one's kind of more of a personal note, and just asking if I'm doing good. And I am doing good. Thanks very much for asking. You talk in the question about being overwhelmed. You know, there's ups and downs, but that kind of just goes with the job, I guess. But yeah, maybe we'll do more details on that at some point in the future. Anyway, question 1. I understand that you don't like the Gemstore and its implementation, but without it, the game would lose a majority of its funding, and the people running the game, like devs, social, international, etc. teams, still need to get paid, because, you know, living expenses, family support, whatnot. And the X-Packs and the Living Story episodes don't guarantee them continuous income. Only big surges and then almost nothing. So my question is, what would you propose would be a better way of implementing the Gemstore, or what type of continuous income would you prefer for Guild Wars 2? It's funny because the Mount Gate thing did bring a lot of suggestions to my attention. Stuff like even carbon copies of the VIP system that they had going on in China. I think you're very intelligent to have identified that when they release an expansion or whatever, they're just big spikes and then it does basically evaporate. And I think that obviously the Gemstore is important. Hopefully I never gave anyone the impression in my Mount Gate video, and there's a few questions about it on today's Super Q&A. Hopefully, I never gave anyone the impression that I think the Gemstore shouldn't exist at all. I believe it is a necessary evil. And I do think that there are good ways of implementing it. My top-level belief about the Gemstore and about how you should partition rewards between a Gemstore and the rest of the game is I think that you need very clear things that come from the Gemstore, very clear things that come from in-game, and never do they cross, right? If you're getting armor skins as rewards in-game, they should never be sold on the Gemstore. If you're selling mini pets in the Gemstore, they shouldn't be something that people are getting in the game. Because as soon as you cross those wires, I think it does a lot of damage to the in-game rewards and what they feel that they are worth. Like, I should never feel like I've just worked really hard on legendary armor, but this outfit for a couple of gems looks so much better. I should never spend even a short amount of time getting a really cute-looking little mini-pet, a little black moa chick, only to then discover that on the Gemstore, they've been selling even cuter-looking or more varied versions of other, you know, spring-based bunnies and squirrels and otters and all that kind of stuff. Like, these are the things that I think are really dangerous. There's obviously a whole other slew of really blunt things that I don't like about microtransactions and Gemstores, excessively pay-to-winny stuff. But Guild Wars and ArenaNet tend to have always done fine on that, so we just don't talk about it that much. But, you know, to compare Guild Wars' microtransactions to 99% of all other MMOs out there, they are, you know, they're very, very good. One of the biggest places I'm not very settled on with the Guild Wars Gemstore, I did touch on in the Mountgate video. I haven't thought about it enough, and I don't think I have, you know, the stats, the numbers, the information to know. But the whole gold to gems and gems to gold thing, as much as that affords the Gemstore the freedom to, you know, push the line a lot, and for me to still consider it's okay, I do think that beyond anything else has damaged my enthusiasm to really work on rewards and accrue wealth and stuff in this game. I think that really undermines a lot of the game. I'll come back to that in just a moment, but yeah, so that's kind of the big thing that I'm still wrestling with, and I'm not too sure. A lot of people have been asking for a full video on this topic, like what would my perfect Gemstore be, especially in response to the Mountgate thing, so maybe I'll do that at some point. The next question is, when you aren't streaming, what streamers do you watch? What type of streams do you like watching? And what's the biggest donation you've ever given to a streamer? Now, if you watch my streams, you will realize quite frequently I come out and say, I've never donated to anyone, so thanks so much if you've just donated to me or whatever. That's actually a lie. That's wrong, and I'm only just realizing that that's a lie now. I have actually maybe once or twice ever given $5 to some very small-time streamers. That said, I have never actually subbed to anyone. And I very rarely follow people at that. I think I've got like maybe 6 people I follow on all of Twitch. Usually I just end up following games. So there's kind of 2 different me's that use Twitch. There's the WoodenPotatoes side of me that's a massive Guild Wars fan and cares a huge amount about Guild Wars 2 and what's going on the scene. And on those occasions, you know, I'll watch anyone who's anyone on Twitch. I've probably watched their stream at some point, and I'll occasionally browse random people's streams on Twitch. Particularly after I host someone at the end of one of my own, I'll end up watching them for a bit. But when it's not in that capacity, when I'm just a normal guy on the internet just browsing Twitch for leisure, I am super into speed runs and challenge runs of old-ass PlayStation games. Especially, I've been on a huge stint for the old Tomb Raider ones for quite some time now. So mostly I watch those kinds of streams. I will say as well that I tend to gravitate towards smaller streams. There's something in me that doesn't like adding to the pile of someone who's already on the top of a section. So like if I was outside myself and I looked at the Guild Wars 2 section and I saw WoodenPotatoes streaming and he's at the top on Twitch, I would never click his stream ever. I would feel he doesn't deserve it. I would feel someone else with much less viewers is going to have much better interaction, and I'll nearly always click the lower people. There's something, maybe it's a part of jealousy in there. Maybe it's that I don't like the way things are and everybody always just tunnels in at the top and people snowball higher and higher just because they already have a platform, which is a well understood phenomenon, and I know that is accredited to a lot of my own success. I don't really like that. And so when I'm browsing, it's the same with YouTube videos as well. If I see something with excessively more views than I think it deserves or whatever, I click off of those videos very quickly. I don't give them the watch time retention. I don't, and you know, I try to find other people. In fact, right now, I'm really looking for a YouTuber that covers broad gaming, contemporary gaming topics, reviews, commentary, stuff like that, but basically has no audience. I'm really trying to find like a perfect, really good person like that, but is in kind of a low subscriber range so that I can watch them and feel a part of their community. I just don't know where to look right now. So that's the kind of consumer I am on the internet. I'm like one of these bitter, twisted people that doesn't want to make successful people more successful, despite hypocritically desiring that for myself when it comes to being WoodenPotatoes. So yeah, that's what I do on Twitch. I favor the little guys, and I'm genuinely sincere about that, and I wish more people would do that too. I think it would have led to a more diverse scene in the Guild Wars side of things as well, which is always good. Moving on, that's enough of that. Next question is from Lucas York, who says, Hi WP, understandably, your focus for the past few months has been on a Guild Wars 2 and the launch of Path of Fire. However, I was wondering if you could give a rundown on any non-Guild Wars content you might have planned for the future. For example, do you expect to start any new LPs at some point? Okay, so this is coming up a lot, and especially a lot just after Path of Fire is out. Doing non-Guild Wars stuff is extremely important to me. It won't look like it's important to me if you were to look at my channel since Heart of Thorns came out, really. Not Heart of Thorns, maybe a year or so after Heart of Thorns, especially after Living World Season 3 kicked off. It's not going to look like that. And most people who watch me, most people listening right now, don't care about it either. They only want me for the Guild Wars stuff. That's just the reality, but I do think it's extremely important. And after Path of Fire has come out, it's something, and we're rolling into Season 4 extremely quickly. It's very much on my mind because I've kind of realized that ArenaNet put out so much content now, and you need to play so much Guild Wars to actually be smart about Guild Wars to the level I would want to be, and actually present all of that, that it really, if I let it be, as it has been for a long time since the start of Season 3, this will be everything professionally. It can easily be that. And I kind of don't want that. I do need other doors. I do want other directions. And I enjoy doing other stuff so much as well. So anybody who's listening to me right now who wants other projects, trust me, there's stuff coming. I'm really scared to talk about things and ideas that I've got and progress that I've made on various things. Because if it falls through, then I feel like I've let everyone down. But I've got to find just the right thing. I think I have found it. And believe me, there will be LPs and stuff like that. I really hope people hold out. I mentioned this on a stream lately. Somebody left Patreon just the other day. I asked them why, and they said, well, look, I don't watch Guild Wars stuff. I only like you for your other stuff, and it seems a bit silly that I'm still waiting around. It's been long enough. And they didn't say that maliciously or angrily. They were just, you know, being perfectly honest, and I can understand that, and it crushed me to hear that. It really crushed me, so it's something I'm rallying around. And I get if people are starting to wonder, wow, is this it for WP? It's just Guild Wars, because obviously Season 4, and it's a goddamn triple release, and that could be like, you know, a full month of tons of stuff to talk about. So don't worry, I am on the job. It is probably more important to me than to the people listening, and as few of you as there are out there. But trust me, I've got my eye on the prize, I promise, and we will see non-Guild Wars stuff for WoodenPotatoes. We will. It just depends on how quickly and what exactly, which I'm being cagey about. Next, we have a question from Manny Moonstone, who says, do you think mounts should be balanced better, nerfed, in Corteria? Even in level to 60-70 maps, mounts can one-shot a whole wave of mobs during an event. This causes everyone to fight over resources more than usual. Seems to go against the spirit of people joining together for an event. Yeah, like, that is definitely a thing that Guild Wars was never meant to be about. The devs have been so, like, cavalier and hand-wavy about their handling of Corteria for so long. And I figured that they reason they can just sort of get people to buy their way through it with the new level 80 boost on the Gemstore, or throwing tomes at us, and hopefully consolidate everyone into the later maps. And I think that might be what's really going on here. I think they might have identified that if Corteria is really good, and lots of people are around there playing lots of it all the time, and they're actually encouraging people to go back there, is that going to spread people too thin? They really want the Path of Fire maps to be full when Path of Fire comes out, and they want other maps to be, you know, Living World maps to be full when they come out. And they don't want to have to do the weird Living World Season 1 thing of upscaling people and all of this kind of odd stuff. So I think while it is a problem, there's also so few people around Corteria, maybe a lot of those events, it's not the worst thing in the world. And, you know, it does really upset me. The one silver lining I found so far is that on the Merciless Challenge that I'm now doing, one-shotting stuff on the Raptor and pulling them in 10 targets at a time and getting tons of bonus experience actually really speeds the pace of the whole run and the whole challenge up in a good way. So I kind of hate it, but I've managed to find a way to play the game under an extraordinary circumstance that allows me to see the silver lining. And maybe you can find some similar thing for yourself. But hey, the devs did nerf it once. Maybe they'll nerf it again. Maybe they just didn't do it enough. We'll see. Next, we've got a question from Deeg, who says, hey WP, I really enjoyed your commentary on Mountgate. And so, by the way, guys, this is the first comment about Mountgate, and there's a few in this episode, so I might not spend too long on this one, but we'll fill in the gaps later as well. I really enjoyed your commentary on Mountgate, but I was taken aback by the defensiveness of its tone. I think it was unfortunate that it lasered in so hard on the one aspect of it that will be totally forgotten by the community at large, and that was the community's reaction. Your gentle disdain for the Gemstore also really surprised me. It sounds like you've inured yourself to nearly any level of anti-consumerism that comes out of it. If I could sum up the impression I've gathered after a second listen through of the video with a phrase, I'd say it's this. Well, of course it sucks. What exactly did you people expect? Is this the message you hoped to communicate? If you could extend your comments, what might you add or withdraw? Thanks for your hard work and thoughtfulness, WP. You make playing the game a richer experience. That's such a well-worded question there. I think you're basically right that this idea of course it sucks, what exactly did you expect? That's basically my thoughts. Now, let me be perfectly blunt about that video. It's not a good video. It's not the video people wanted, because it's not actually tackling the problem of the Gemstore, or how the mounts were handled, or offering any solutions, or taking any sides. It's none of that. Well, it does have the vote with your wallet bit, and I very much do believe in voting with your wallet, but that's not a very profound thought to come to, is it? And the real discussion there is, does voting with your wallet work when they rely on whales? But are whales applicable here when we see everybody having the mounts, and on, which none of that actually made it into the video? No, it's kind of a bad video because all that video actually is it's my defense of a lack of anger or enthusiasm, my lack of desire to rally around the topic. That video is just a fluffy piece that basically says, I'm not touching this because I don't care. I did not care about the outrage enough, and I could list a lot of very good reasons for why I didn't. And those may have been terrible things and things I should be ashamed of. You know, basically being a boiled frog. An admission of being a boiled frog. An admission that I'm beyond the pale and that, you know, I'm not going to fight for you anymore because, you know, I was fighting for this in 2012, 2010, 2011, and I'm tapped now, right? And then it's a long list of the reasons why I didn't particularly care, and I didn't care for the vitriol, and I didn't feel aligned with the community's reaction. So yeah, it's mostly focused. You say it's very pointedly focused on the community's reaction, and maybe that's not important. You're right. It's not that important to talk about the community's reaction and how I don't feel a party to it. But that's what the video is, because that's the only part of the whole thing I really felt I had much to talk about, because that was what was weighing so heavily on my mind. That video is much more of a VOD than it is like a commentary or critique or, you know, intellectual piece and force for change. Underneath, that's really what's going on. And it's not the video, as I say, people were looking for. And yet you now might be thinking, but I made it anyway. That's not really my MO. I wouldn't usually make a video like that or felt obligated to do it. But I did this one. Now, the reason I made it is because it was kind of a video I almost felt forced to make. In that, you know, people look to me to present commentary on topics like this. It's an opportunity in terms of viewership and so on to talk about things like this. But also, I was kind of in a bit of a lose-lose situation, and this is not me asking for pity or sympathy here. I was in a bit of a lose-lose situation where I can either make the fundamentally bad video and, you know, be honest with people and accept that you're going to get some shit for it and put it out there anyway, or don't talk about it at all and get accused, because you haven't said anything, of being a shill or a sellout or, you know, having lost your touch or not having any balls and all these kinds of things. And I know that sounds really weird, but the idea of not making a video at all really felt very much off the table quite quickly to me. I've already mentioned this. I was asleep when all of this blew up. I woke up the following day, and it was a pretty long sleep I'd had. But I woke up the following day to multiple messages from people either directly accusing me of being a shill or a sellout, or kind of passive-aggressive comments like, no ArenaNet partners are talking about this ... or wow, I can't believe they've managed to silence all of the ArenaNet partners, or wow, I guess all the partners really are in ANET's pocket, and so on. And I really couldn't stand seeing those comments. I couldn't stand the thought that my silence would make those people think they're right, and that somehow I had been bought, and somehow I couldn't have my own thoughts and opinions anymore, and you shouldn't listen to WoodenPotatoes or any other partner, when that's just so far from the reality. So I kind of felt pressured into doing the video. I was told by a lot of people when that came out, dissenters, that I did the cowardly thing by expressing my views as I did there. But I don't think people really quite realize, even if ArenaNet had been bullying me to say one thing or another, I am always more beholden to the audience than I am to, you know, ArenaNet or any kind of partner program I'd be in. I can get by without ArenaNet. I cannot get by without people having at least some modicum of respect for my opinion and having an actual audience. If the audience goes, that's it. So if I'm scared, if I'm going to feel bullied into expressing one opinion or another, or being silent about something or not silent about something, it's never going to come more from anywhere else than the YouTube comments, than the actual people watching and you guys. It's the viewers that have more power than anything else. So I really don't think that, as bad as the video was in the end and fundamentally useless as it was, I don't think that was the cowardly thing to do. I think it was just the honest thing to do, and accept whatever flack I got from it as a result as well. So yeah, kind of a bit of a lose-lose situation. There is obviously secret option number 3 too, which I'll go out and say probably happens a hell of a lot on YouTube, not just necessarily in the Guild Wars scene, but all over, which is I could have met the truly cowardly thing to do would have been to go online and lie to you all, pretend to care, pretend to be angry and up in arms, because again, remember, I fundamentally agree with what everyone's saying. I just didn't align with the scale of the backlash that came out. I could have lied to you all. I could have pretended. I could have faked it. I could have raked in tons more views. I could have drawn basically no ire whatsoever, except from people who I identify with, essentially, secretly on the inside. And I could have done that. That would have been very, very easy. I could have done a quick 10 to 15 minutes piece, and that would have been it. But I tried to be honest, and I think that's just the way I'll keep going. I reckon in like 2 to 3 years, I look back on that video, and whatever backlash I got over it will not offset me being proud of the fact that that was me and what I genuinely thought. Eventually, all of this will blow over, and I was true to myself, so I think I picked the right course, and I'll do it again if I have to. So there you go. That's basically the addendum to it. You ask if there's anything I could subtract or add to it. If I was going to change it at all, I'd probably change the start to much more quickly and clearly outline that I am against the practice, and you know, I fundamentally am on the same side. A lot of people think that I love mount contracts, and it's because clearly they watched the first 2 minutes and then tuned out. Maybe I shouldn't care what their opinion is anyway, but there was a lot of that, and I guess maybe that just shows how quickly people click on and off of YouTube videos. The other thing maybe I already mentioned in the answer here, I'd probably add more on the vote with your wallet discussion, because I do think there is a very reasonable counter argument to that, which is, well, they live on Wales. But then I think that there is a lot more discussion to get immediately on that as well, which is, yeah, but everyone has the mounts, and Wales or no, this has an upper limit. It's not like other microtransaction stores, which is where most of this understanding of the whole whale thing comes from. This specific subject as well, you can, whether you're a whale or not, you can spend $120 and that's it. Then you're done. That's it. It's over. You've got all of the contracts, right? And so clearly it's not like they're preying on a couple of individuals. At some point it has to have widespread appeal to rake in as much profit as possible, because they can only tap a certain amount of money out of individuals. And I think that that was really important as well as a discussion. None of that really made it in there. It's probably some other minor stuff, but hey, this has been a huge answer already, and I think there's more Mount Gate stuff coming up, so let's just leave it there. Thanks very much for the lovely comment there, and let's move on. So Ada says, question 1, remind me about how many bonus there are for the orphan run in Winter Day for karma. What is the max karma you can get pre-day? That's possibly one of the weird. I actually have got no. You've beat me. I've got no idea. I really don't know. I don't think I've ever ran orphans at Winter's Day. I apologize. Maybe once for a video years ago. Question 2. What is something you've been really proud of lately, personally or game related? Oh, it's scary when you don't have an answer on the tip of your tongue for that, isn't it? That is actually very scary. God. I guess I'm pretty goddamn proud of the competition. I think that we've seen some really awesome videos come from that. Things that I haven't been able to talk about specifically. But I think we did some cool stuff for the Guild Wars 2 scene. I don't know how much impact we've really had. I don't know how much we've really grown the game. But I put my all in that. That's actually been a lot of work. And a lot more work coming up as well with the judging. And I'm proud that I did it. I think that was a good little project there. And another thing I'm proud of is actually the current state of Merciless. I think that's really fun, and I think I've really made the streams a lot more enjoyable for myself, so I'm quite proud of that too. Both work-related. What am I proud of personally? How about we don't dive into that? Next, we got Your Programming Network, who says, you often refer to ArenaNet's decision to run with dragons as the core antagonist is due to them being flavor of the month at the time of release. What do you think they would have ran with if launched in 2017 if we followed the same principle of flavor of the month? I adore this question. This is such an exciting question. I think if it was a little bit earlier, it would have quite easily been a zombie game. I mean, it kind of was a zombie game with all the Risen and stuff, right? They just didn't push too heavily on that, and I guess zombies with RPGs wasn't as sincere as zombies in shooters and stuff at the time. And as much as I love this question, I don't know right now, because I'm not sure what an RPG flavor of the month really is right now. The big RPG I'm playing right at the moment is Divinity Original Sin 2. And can I define any, like, one major facet of that as a flavor of the monthy thing? I mean, it's got a lot of stuff to do with godliness. I don't know. I really don't. Especially for an MMO that has to be very broad, you know? Maybe they would have just had a singular antagonist, and then we would have moved on to a totally different story with a totally different antagonist for a totally different reason. A bit like what they did with Prophecies transitioning into factions. You know, they're just different stories. Maybe they would have done that, and there would have been a big world with dragons as a part of it, and zombies as a part of it, and all this other stuff, but they wouldn't have bound all of the campaigns and expansions as they are now together in such a tight way. But yeah, let me throw that back at the comments. What the hell is the flavor of the month for RPGs right now? I don't know. Blademaster00 says, hey, taters. What would you like to see in a possible achievement chest reward upgrade? The golden gems is great, but the box contents are lacking. You only get like a jug of karma, a blueprint, a gemstore item, and some other mystic forge stones. So what would you like to see this chest offer? It's a good question. I'm actually kind of cynical at continuously having to update achievement chests and stuff like that. I think that if they constantly have to do that, it's like shoveling snow while it's still snowing. Let them put a system in and hopefully have it all right, you know? I would rather they tackle it that is to say, I'd rather they tackle it at the other end and make getting karma more interesting to us again. And they kind of started with that with Season 3, where you can spend a lot of karma. The blueprints in World vs. World, I would say you tackle that from World vs. World's ends. The Mystic Forge Stones, I think, could themselves have an update, but I'd rather them do it that way than, you know, throw a bunch more into those boxes that then may become antiquated again later, and then again later, and then again. Like, all these systems need bringing up, and I'd rather they go in the other direction. Similar to how login rewards, I actually think, got a lot more interesting and powerful when the Mystic Coin economy shifted. Most people don't think about that, but it's actually really nice that the Mystic Coins had value when it came to the strength of the login rewards. The alternate world is that never happened, and Blademaster01 is asking me on a Super Q&A, hey, what should they... I don't think they should give us Mystic Coins anymore. Let's do an overhaul of login rewards. You know, there's always two angles, and I'd rather they go the other way. Sebastian Bergstoller says, yes, the good old Super Q&A. 3 questions. First, what aspect of Guild Wars 2 do you love that you know other people absolutely hate? What aspect of Guild Wars 2 do you hate that you know other people absolutely love? And if I had to design a feature for Guild Wars 2 around Guild Wars 2, like the API, what would I want? Probably no one else would. What would it be? I've thought about this for a while, and it's quite difficult to answer these. Well, I actually kind of answered one of them immediately. What do I love but other people hate? The Mystic Coin economy. Genuinely, I think it's been very good for login rewards. I think it's been very good for certain Mystic Forge recipes. I think it's made... And again, I remind you of what I answered earlier. The harder things are to get, the more rewarded I feel when I get them. So the fact that, you know, legendary crafting bloated from the Mystic Coins, while, by the way, at the same time, a lot of the other components got cheaper during the Heart of Thorns days, I was never particularly upset by it. I even see the positives in it. And so that's one thing. I could even give you another example as well of something that I quite like but other people hate. That is the fact that legendary weapons cannot sigil swap. People feel like the devs are obligated to give it to them just because it's on legendary armor. I'm still quite old school when it comes to this franchise. I believe ridiculous grind and really endgamey things we acquire should be cosmetic and should not have profound impacts on gameplay. And legendary weapons getting sigil swapping, even stat swapping, I was fairly against when it came out. I think that these are bad things. I think these are things that Guild Wars 2 shouldn't be embracing. And, you know, the devs say that there's matters of economy that allowed it to happen for the armor, which I guess I'll trust them on. I'm a lot more trusting when the devs talk about the economy than when randoms on the internet talk about the economy, because I don't presume to know better. But, yeah, so that's another thing that, you know, I draw quite a lot of ire. There's tons of stuff, actually. What aspect of Guild Wars 2 do I hate that I know other people absolutely love? Well, so here's another thing. The amount of account binding in the game. I actually don't know whether account binding and one-time ever collections and one-time ever rewards and one-time ever progression is actually what I want to see in this game. I'd rather be able to renewably go through that stuff, and I'd rather things be rebalanced. But most MMO players, most people out there have only ever, especially in the Guild Wars scene, clamored for account bound, account bound, account bound. Most people you find will say that soul bound should never exist, only account bound should exist. Maybe that's a slightly different discussion, but that's another place where I'm not really aligned with the Guild Wars 2 audience whatsoever. That doesn't mean I would argue for these changes to be the game that I want it to be, because I also respect that Guild Wars 2 is a different product, and for a certain audience, and these could be the best things for this game at this time. But deep within me, there are places I differ to everyone else. And if I had to design a feature that no one else would want, and you even mentioned the API, so that gets me thinking, I would like some API stuff that shows us where enemies spawn and like prints combat logs and stuff. And I don't mean for like meters and things. I would like that so that you could essentially create quest add-ons and overlays that tell you to kill certain enemies out in the world, and then you get like fake loot, or it triggers fake quest and it does stuff like that. I think there's a lot of really exciting, interesting stuff there. But the API would need to be extended in some ways that I can't imagine other people really care that much about. So there you go, there's another thing. There you go, I've made myself a total pariah thanks to that question there, Sebastian. I hope you enjoyed. All the hate I'll get for that one. Moving on, we got Tyler Castiglione, who says, WP, with the possibility of Doom returning and the player base returning to the Underworld, and as so many desire, if it becomes a raid, how do you think it will play out, or even where the main focus point of the raid will be? It would be interesting to see how everything changed since Grenth abandoned the Mist entirely. Also, do you think they may be adding more to the guild halls and increasing the max level? Would be nice for a change pace for maxed out guilds. Would love to hear your thoughts. All right, so the guild stuff, through the Heart of Thorns days, Spud was pretty much, maxed for a lot of it, and they put an update out, and then, we'd get to the new level. It really didn't add much, honestly. Like when Super Adventure Box music came to the tavern, it's literally I would go to the tavern, click a button, spend some of the already capped currency, and there you go. I think the only way that would actually be interesting is if at the same time as that happening, guilds that are already maxed with maxed Ethereum and stuff, they lose all of it, but that's just not fun. So, I don't know. Because everyone will have always had everything basically stockpiled, and without a massive change, like an entirely new building being added that is for level 69 guilds or something, I think there's some deep changes that would need to happen with the guild system to make that work more. Though, all of that said, I did expect Path of Fire to increase the guild level somewhat, but we're still at level 69. We've been at level 69 for ages now. So that's a bit of a shame. As for the Underworlds, there's a ton of different stuff they could go for, but if it's going to be Doom, I'm guessing the Hall of Judgment and all of that stuff will be mainstays. If they're really going for a nostalgia trip thing, I think we should keep an eye out for the original spawn location from Guild Wars 1, where we met Gwen's mum and so forth. And also, I think one of the big things we might want to look out for, or I would be excited about, is some kind of redo of the Four Horsemen. And maybe some of the, what was it, the Bone Pits? But the Four Horsemen, I'd be well interested in that. Also, the Underworld had like an Elder Dragon-looking thing winding through some of its mountains. That was quite a cool area also. So maybe those. That's what I'd like, but who knows where they'll take it. I also like the idea that the entire thing could get added as an open world map, and the raid is just, or the wing is just like a small section off in one corner somewhere. But we'll see. Zenzia is the next question. It says, WP, are you still using a standing desk setup? Also, have you used any ear candles lately? No, the ear candle experiment was once ever, never again. And yeah, I actually do have a standing desk setup, and I'm really proud of it. I'm actually really happy with it. The trick was to use the base of a bed to then put just a regular full desk on top, and it worked wonders for my height. Brilliant stuff. TJ says, hey WP, with the majority of new games in the MMO genre moving further to the mobile market, do you think the Guild Wars franchise could find itself over there one day? With the success of NCSoft has seen on mobile and the admittedly casual nature of Guild Wars 2, it seems inevitable. Do you think it could work? As much as people talk about the casual nature of Guild Wars 2, if I imagine the Guild Wars 2 forums, Guild Wars 2 Reddit, my comment sections, wherever, in-game, the day that Guild Wars 3 is announced as a mobile game, I cannot imagine anything but bile and vitriol and disgust and upset. I think it would be a terrible, terrible move. Because I think, yes, there is a lot of casual people there, but they're not the mainstays. They're not the bulk of the community because they only play for a day and then they zerg away again. So, I don't know about all of this. I don't know. What I would say is maybe it could work. Maybe we could see the franchise go there, but I don't think we should ever or will ever see primary development of the franchise go there. As in, I don't think we'll find an MMO that replaces Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 development ceases and it all moves to a mobile market. I don't think we'll see that. I think we could see, like, tertiary products that in the end may become bigger and more profitable, sure. Like mini games and card games, that kind of stuff. Or like a little mobile RTS, things like that. We may be more likely to see than like a full-blown transition into the mobile sector. But I think there's space, definitely. And, you know, this isn't even just about Guild Wars. Gaming in general. Mobile's been trending up and up and up and up and up. Not just in terms of profits, but player base as well. If I think about a lot of people I used to know at school, if I think about some family members, a lot of them are mobile gamers now. And what can I say? Next, we got Swatkins818, who says, "Hey WP, I hope you didn't catch too much flack for your mount killing spree on Twitch last week. It was all in good fun." So this, if people don't know, this is a reference to on a stream, people were sending me mount adoption licenses, and I deleted them. I will say to that, actually, most people seem to understand that that was just in good fun, or even I got some respect for that. Let me just be clear. Well, I didn't do that for any kind of noble reason. I did that purely to stop people being able to have arbitrary reasons to call me a sellout or whatever. If I accept those mounts after going on the record saying, "Oh, I don't care why you're all outraged," it makes me look terrible because it makes it look like I'm just not in line with the regular player because I expected to get them for free anyway, which is absolutely not true and would have been an arbitrary, gross, disgusting argument to throw at me, and I didn't want to give anyone any opportunity to do that. So rather than accept any mount skins, even though I wasn't particularly outraged by the whole thing, I deleted them. So there was no nobility in it. It was purely self-interested. Let me be clear about that. Anyway, in all the debates surrounding the Gemstore, one thing that seemed to touch on a lot is the feeling that purchases from the Gemstore are too disconnected from the actual game. It makes me wonder if the main problem isn't the Gemstore itself, but in the delivery system it uses. The most blatantly bad being the RNG loot boxes, of course, but also in the simple mail deliveries. What do you think about this idea for a primo flashy legendary tier skins? Instead of offering the item directly as a skin purchase, put the end of a mini quest which is unlocked via Gemstore purchase. The quest wouldn't be anything big or overly complicated like the failed legendary weapons. Just something to serve as a medium between the game and the Gemstore. No matter how you look at it, this would be extra work for ArenaNet, but billed as a mini content pack with the skin as a reward. At the end, maybe the community would be open to spending more gems on such a thing. After all, for people converting gold to gems, it would still be cheaper than an eternity. The devs have played with stuff like this. What you're kind of talking about is a mini scaled down version of the bonus mission pack, and I think that that is a huge step in the right direction. I would enjoy that a lot. The Guild Wars 2 devs have played with this. If you remember the bouncy mini Black Lion angry chest thing, wasn't that it, right? And it actually like unlocked a little collection that you did. I guess they found for the effort to put it in and the profits they got from it, it wasn't worthwhile. But I think that this is the right way to do things. One thing I'm always very much struck by is years ago, back in like genuine 2008 when I used to play RuneScape, but I didn't have the money to be a member. The way they integrated member features and activities all throughout the free-to-play stuff, I think was really powerful. I've always just, even when we look away from the Gemstore, I've always disliked the way that they rely so heavily on the UI to give us rewards. I don't like the way we just abstractly unlock skills and traits and things. I like the idea of them having some presence in the game, a vendor that I need to speak to and unlock. And, you know, another place that the devs have kind of played with this is if you look at the passes, like the airship pass, that's you're seeing an airship in the sky, you get a pass, you get to go up to it. Like, it feels more involved. It feels like a more real part of the game. The fact that they played with this a few years ago and then it never became a big thing suggests to me that they've already decided that they've already thought about this and they've decided it doesn't work. I think people on the internet need to remember that a lot as well. A lot of the discussions we're having on the internet have already been discussed and counted against for one reason or another. It just might not be apparent to us. There's another thing as well that you make me think of at the start of this, and it relates to a conversation I was having with World of Enders. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me talking about this. So this is the guy I do Boots Bad build with and so forth. We were talking a little bit on Skype about all of this, and he gave me an interesting thought experiment where he said, what if they did add all 30 mount skins at once, and all of them are RNG, exactly as they are. The mount adoption license contract is an item, everything's exactly the same. But instead of pulling the mount adoption license contract off of the Gemstore, what if it was being sold by a vendor in the world? And it still costs 400 gems, exactly 400 gems, but it's presented as the gold equivalent of 400 gems. So the result would be the same. People could get out their credit cards, spend the same amount of real-world money. It's the same RNG that they're rolling through. Everything's the same. But because of this small, arbitrary, psychological difference, because it's presented in-game, I genuinely question now, and this is the thought experiment, would there have been a backlash? There's even the possibility of they could have locked that NPC to only spawn at the end of a meta event, and oh look, how does it appear now? It looks like what the devs have actually done is they've added 30 skins, and because it's given to you presented as gold, they're in-game earnable, and look, it's incentive to complete meta events, and yeah, they're really expensive, but look, it's end game, and look at how cool a lot of them are, and look, these are actually legendary mounts, and you know, there's a chance that people could have really enjoyed it. There would have been grumbling against the grind, and people would have, on the underneath, all known that anyone could have bypassed it with a credit card, but that's a fact we've all come to accept since years ago anyway. So it's just another one of these interesting things that just shows how arbitrary all of this is, and how, you know, how easily they can boil the frog, and how maybe what they're doing here was only, you know, just a hair's width shy of being something people would have totally accepted. You know, you can even do some other interesting things where that gold price that the NPC offers has a little reminder that you can buy gems, or it scales, because obviously gems to gold and gold to gem changes based on players purchasing and selling them. You can have it as a Guild Wars 1 style material vendor that actually fluctuates, and that would have been a lot more transparent there, what the devs were doing with the gem economy in the market and trying to earn real world money. But I wonder then whether that added layer of complexity and discussion that has to go in to make people understand what's happening here would have doused the fires even further. So anyway, I think all of this stuff's interesting. We're kind of getting into more topics like the Mountgate video itself did. So I guess I will leave it there. Back to the core idea. Yeah, many little bonus mission pack style things. I think that would be good. But the fact they don't do it suggests to me it's probably not profitable. And here we are. Aelthes says, "Hey WP, I was wondering if you would like to discuss a little bit about your experience with other RPGs and MMOs outside of the Guild Wars franchise. I know you played a lot of stuff, from LBA to Elder Scrolls, Final Fantasy games, recently Divinity Original Sin 2, but did you ever play grand classics and my personal favourites like Baldur's Gate or Planescape Torment? What is your experience with D&D or the new Pillars of Eternity franchise? When it comes to MMOs, have you considered playing other classics like WoW, FF14, or new titles like Black Desert Online? I ask because I think our views on the game we currently play are heavily influenced by our other gaming experiences. Personally, I played all of this stuff I've mentioned, even though I've been focused a lot on Guild Wars 2 since its release. Maybe exploring and even making videos about those different RPGs and MMOs could be interesting to compare them with what Guild Wars did and offer a fresh perspective when discussing Guild Wars 2 gameplay, storytelling, characterization, etc. Keep up the fantastic work, and thanks for being one of the few balanced voices of reason during the Mountgate controversy. Thank you very much." Wow, there's a lot to get into there. So, as to the grand classics, Baldur's Gate 2, Planescape Torment. Baldur's Gate 2 I have played. I do know a bit about. I actually remember watching my father play a lot of. I've also played some action RPGs, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance and Dark Alliance 2, which were very different games, but hey. Planescape Torment, no, I've never played, but I have heard about it. And my experience with actual pen and paper and D&D, very, 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 very limited. I've had like maybe 2 sessions ever, but I don't think they were GM'd very well, and I don't remember having a particularly pleasant experience with them. And maybe one day I'd like to go back if I could find the time. But that's basically it when it comes to that. I'm sure there's lots of other RPGs that I have played. It's kind of hard to suddenly pull them out of a vacuum here in a conversational tone. I guess I'll try and write a list. I tried doing that a while ago, writing a list of all the games I've ever played, and it's actually extremely difficult. Anyway, as to MMOs, yes, WoW I have played a couple of times. I played like 2 characters years and years and years ago, back during like the Burning Crusade days, or maybe even vanilla, on a friend's account, and that was it. I played it last year for April Fools as a joke for the background of a video, much like this. And actually the announcement of WoW Classic, I'm really interested in. And I've mentioned this, I genuinely think I'm going to stream some World of Goddamn Warcraft. Not because I'm particularly excited about the game itself or the philosophies in the game itself, but I am excited to gain some perspective on that MMO. and to learn about things in that MMO that I really don't understand, and to be able to compare a bit better how Guild Wars always did things, and, you know, Blizzard's success and stuff like that. I think that will be really cool. And yeah, you might get to see that on Twitch with me, maybe even some YouTube videos if people want them, when WoW Classic comes out. I really think I might, just for sort of that higher level sort of curiosity type thing. I don't know how much I'll play it, but definitely. FF14, I'm really not interested in playing whatsoever. But BDO I played, and I streamed a little bit of BDO. I think most episodes like this I talk about if someone asks me if I played BDO, so we won't go into that again. So yeah, I think that idea of playing other games, getting perspective for them, broadening the horizons, I think that's all really important, all really cool. It doesn't surprise me you're asking this, as many people are asking me and looking to me to do non-Guild Wars stuff right now, as Path of Fire sort of winds down in their eyes. And I'll chalk you up as another comment like those. So, and next we got Tristan Cesara, who says, hello there, you might have been asked this a million times, but I've missed the answer, so I'm asking again. I'm assuming your parents didn't put WoodenPotatoes on your birth certificate, and that it is therefore something you came up with for use on the internet, so where did the inspiration come from this name? I will say I think it is a terrific name, and it makes me think of some obscure character from the Spike Milligan might have come up with for the Goon Show. I actually really don't like the name. I think that a lot of people do a name like this on the internet. I don't like feeling like one part of the crowd, and I also don't like that people probably look at my name online and they think I'm doing it because I'm copying one of the other successful people that has a name like this, or it was some targeted thing. And it wasn't. This is an old name when I was an early teenager. Basically, as YouTube came out and I made this account. I didn't know what to call myself. Now, I had a friend who had created one of their usernames by combining two things together, two objects together that they were in range of. And so I was stuck on a moment. You know, this wasn't anything big. It was my YouTube channel was to make playlists for music videos, and I still actually have it still online. It's set to private, and most of the videos have been copyright claimed at this point. But that's what the YouTube account was. I never in a million years would have considered making videos. I was way too nervous about my voice to ever do something like that. I was too concerned it was too high-pitched. And so, yeah, I was stuck in a moment, and it didn't really matter. It wasn't that important. So I thought of two things to combine. I saw that my desk was made of wood, so I got wooden. And I guess as a young teenager, what's a funny word that makes people scoff? To this day, it does. And I always cringe a little knowing I was like this. Potato, that's a funny word, isn't it? Yeah, let's joke about potatoes. Everybody likes saying potato. That's a funny word. And I guess I thought potatoes. I don't know why I went plural, but there you go. And yes, I've told this story many times, but it's a super Q&A, and I said I'd answer them all. So there you go. That's we'll put that up to time 15. I'll see you guys next month when someone asks me again. Next, we've got Reserve, who says, dungeons probably won't be worked on or new ones added, but do you think dungeons could still have a place, would have a benefit in Guild Wars if one or two were added to Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire? I love being able to travel the map and go into a dungeon rather than just go into a fractal that doesn't have a location. Yeah, we've had massive amounts of discussion on this. And I think that mostly it boils down to that. People like dungeons because they want the feeling that they're going into a location. I think it's all fairly arbitrary anyway, because like when you go into Ascalon Catacombs, you're not unfogging the regular world map anymore, are you? And also, raiding gives you that experience, but even better because you are unfogging the map and you are exploring somewhere properly on Tyria. That's not to say they couldn't do a dungeon that does the raid style world map unfog thing. But I don't know, I just think that it's such a tiny, arbitrary little thing. As someone who plays a lot of fractals, as someone who plays a lot of raids, as someone who actually goes back and does dungeons on occasion as well when I find a new build that I think's got some solo capability. As someone who does these things, I feel absolutely no need for dungeons. And people have contested me on that many times. But I've never heard a convincing reason that's made me think, yeah, I really want to go back to a dungeon. Everything that dungeons ever gave me, I think, have been fulfilled, if not in fractals, then in raids in other ways. The two combined have given me everything I care for with that. And so, yeah, I'm afraid to say I don't really care for more dungeons, but I wouldn't be upset if they added them, and I wouldn't be upset for people asking for them. You're more than welcome to have that as your opinion, that dungeons are the best thing. I just don't share it. Next, we got Feral Lee Warden, who says, "Hey WP, in your possibly upcoming Elder Scrolls series, assuming you take a lore-focused look at the game, how will you be handling Coda? The idea presented by ex-dev Michael Kirkbride that encourages Elder Scrolls lore to be open source and freely interpreted. How, if at all, will this affect your ideas presenting the series, be it from focusing on the game in or out of lore?" Yeah, so one of the big things about Elder Scrolls is, you know, that there's such a massive pool to get through, and it's not just in the games. I think I would focus mostly on what is in-game, and I would talk very tangibly about that as if that is the main canon. So people who are a bit out of the loop here, the idea of this is that you have the setting, you have the franchise, but the power to tell stories within that franchise and that setting is not bestowed just upon people who were paid to write books and to write quests and stuff and who will work at Bethesda and so on. Those aren't the people that have power to change the world and add to the world. Everyone has the power. Your random fan fiction online has the power to be canon within this setting if you want it to be. And essentially, Coda is a story that I've not read, but what I understand is it basically deconstructs, that's a good word, the idea of canonicity in games or just in general. And so it kind of blows the doors wide open. And to me, as a consumer, someone who likes games, who likes stories, I don't actually really like this that much. I think I can understand why a developer, or why a writer, I should say, would really love the idea of people being able to play with their own interpretations without having to go to the effort of finding hard answers to their questions. I understand how thrilling it must be to write something and watch people take away your baby and twist it and speculate about it and talk about it and, you know, come up with their own things. I get why leaving open doors is fun, but I don't actually necessarily think it's the best thing to do. And I don't like the idea of the dissolving of it into everyone's hands, because I think at some point you cross a line where the entire thing loses its identity. And I do like, to some degree, this stuff to be directed to me and given to me and dictated to me. That's a better word. So, yeah, I think I would probably fall, looking at it now, I mean, maybe my opinions change eventually, but I would probably fall on the sign that I don't really like what Michael's advocating for there. We can talk more about ES later, I guess, but yeah, thanks for that's a cool question. Next, we've got Bob Fergith, who says, "Hey WP, I seem to not really have a question, just statements. I just got Path of the Gods achievement. I noticed the text mentions Doom and how there's no statues of him. Thought it was kind of neat given the dead bodies and all. As a side note, my daughter, 6 months, seems to really love your voice. Every time I put on one of your videos, she zones in on the TV and gets real quiet. So thanks for soothing her teething face." Oh, wait, I do have a question. Do you read / like 2000 AD? Sorry, I've never read or understand anything really about 2000 AD. I did a quick wiki of it a second ago, but it's not anything I really recognize or have any opinions of. Congratulations on the 6-month-old daughter, though, and I guess I should watch my swearing in these videos again. I always feel bad about that with parents watching, but hey, there you go. Sorry, they come out sometimes. Next, we have Radical Compounds, who said, "Hey WP, hope you've been doing well outside of Guild Wars 2. I have indeed, thank you very much. First of all, thanks for the Mountgate video. It's really hard to find depth among the internet vitriol. I have a couple of questions. One, some of my friends think that the decision to sell mount skins this way was more of NCSoft's decision than ArenaNet's. Do you know how decision making is divided between a parent and a subsidiary company, especially since NCSoft is in South Korea and consumers there are more used to MMOs with different payment structure? Two, you mentioned millennials in your video. Do you consider yourself a millennial? Thank you. No, I don't really consider myself a millennial. The whole thing about, you know, NCSoft versus ArenaNet. First of all, it's NCSoft West that published, so it's got nothing, you know, the Korean practices and stuff has got nothing to do with it. I think that people on the outside, when we don't know much about a topic, we tend to simplify things. And I think it would be really nice if I could come online and say to you, oh yeah, it works exactly like this. It is black and white. Every developer and every publisher, every relationship that's ever been, it's all the same. It's like this. Publishers are always money hungry and greedy, and they can always jerk you around and do whatever they want. I don't think that's right. I think the type of game it is, I think the type of companies they are, I think the way that these products are released, all of this has a massive impact on the kind of contracts that people sign, the kind of workplace cultures that link the two together. I don't think we can say. I don't think anyone claiming to know, unless they work in a senior position in either of these companies, can really know that well. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there, I think, because what's the point in talking about something I feel wholly ignorant on? But I know why you're interested in this topic, and believe me, I am too. Next, we got Bava, who says, "Hey WP, you have any plans for New Year's already?" Nothing super tangible, but basically just a desire to get out more. You know, I feel like I'm hitting a midlife crisis, and I'm only in my mid-20s, but I'm realizing, you know, these are sort of my prime years, and I feel like I do spend it too long absorbed in my work, and that, like, my work is everything to me, and I want to be getting out more, I want to be doing more stuff, so just a vague desire to do that. It's funny because I got really into and maybe I've already talked about this, but I got really into the show The Thick of It recently. And there's a character called Malcolm Tucker in it who's like this hard ass. And you kind of get hints throughout the series that maybe like his life is empty and he's got nothing except politics and he's got nothing except his job. And he breaks down in this epic rant at the end of the show where he talks about how the job has been everything and has taken him in every hole in his body. And it's so hilarious. And I just can kind of imagine ironically feeling that way about the internet and YouTubing unless I maybe diversify what I'm doing a bit more over the next coming years. So we'll try to not end up in a Malcolm Tucker type situation. And yeah, just try and get out more, do more things. I know that's a really crappy non-answer, but there you have it. Next question is from Frederick Soderquist, who says, "It would be interesting to know how your income is split between Patreon, Twitch, YouTube, and sporadic donations. It would also be interesting to know how the income varies over the year and before and after new content is released. Do you ever consider going back to a day job to have YouTube, Twitch as a side project? Also, on a side note, I enjoyed your Mount Gate discussion. It was well-reasoned and brave. Thank you." Yeah, I don't know how tacky it is to go too detailed on my finances, but a lot of it's pretty obvious, right? So very much big releases are super important. So the Heart of Thorns release was super important. The Path of Fire release was super important. Whatever comes in 2 years is extremely important. People using those buy links for myself and for anyone else really does make a world of difference. And so for that reason, it's kind of weird. It's like you live on like a 2-year harvest, if you will. And you need to make sure that things stretch out comfortably to get you 2 years further down the line. As for the other things, you know, I'm not a big YouTuber. We all know that. So, you know, I don't really get that much. Patreon is absolutely the bulk. Anybody who goes to Patreon, you're a god. You basically help me live my life. YouTube ads are a pittance. Twitch ads generally are a pittance. Sometimes people can be really nice with donations. And around Path of Fire's release, actually, the ads and stuff from Twitch were pretty good. But generally speaking, that stuff's really inconsistent and you can't account for it. Just hope that something nice will happen one day, but you can't like average anything out because it's just so weird. So yeah, that's really it. It's just very fluctuaty and spiky. There's very little stability. It's an extremely different life to the other full-time regular jobs that I've worked before, where you get a very comfortable paycheck and you know things very well. But hey, you know, there's prices to pay for having such great lives. Also, do you consider getting back to a day job and having YouTube/Twitch as a side project? You know, I actually believe it's a lot more possible than most people would tell you. I think with enough hard work, you can make it happen, definitely. And I think you can be very creative and have a lot of time for a lot of good stuff while holding a full-time job. It just depends how much of a social life you want. For now, I think because I managed to scratch my way through, I'd like to keep doing this and hopefully get to a point where, you know, I'm at the pot at the end of the rainbow. That would be very cool. But there's definitely worlds where this would become a side project again. Like, for example, if I totally fell out of love with Guild Wars 2, just very suddenly one day, just hated Guild Wars 2, and couldn't bring myself to talk about it, couldn't bring myself to do any videos about it, couldn't even bring myself to lie about loving it and so on, because it's just, you know, I hate it, and it's been years and years and years, and I hate it. In that situation, and I suddenly stop covering Guild Wars 2, that's it. It's game over. I'm out. I couldn't sustain a life on that. I'd have to go get another job, and then this would become like a job on the side again, and then hopefully see some kind of change. But it's extremely difficult, and the balance is, you know, it's walking a tightrope. And I've been very fortunate that I love this franchise as much as I do so far. But, you know, this ties into some of the discussions we had earlier. I don't know, I feel like this is now suddenly getting a bit too personal and weird, but there you have it. There's your answer to your question. And thanks very much. Moving on, we got Brian, who says, second to last question here. If you could become fluent in any language in the world, what language would you pick and why? If programming languages count, some kind of programming language. If we're talking just regular spoken languages, and I don't know the answer to this, it's probably in an Asian territory, isn't it? I would find whatever is most spoken in the world and then maybe learn that. I don't have a particular, or if not that, all of that barred, maybe like an old sort of extinct or going extinct language or something, or maybe kind of like Latin or something, just to understand how the English language has derived a lot of its words and things from that. That could be kind of interesting. But yeah, I don't really have any great opinions on that one, sorry. Oh, sorry, that was not the second to last. This is the second to last. Porkanaza, who says, don't know if I'm still in time, but anyways, here's my question. If in a hypothetical universe where ArenaNet and players cared about the Norn and a Norn-centric expansion would be released, what would you want from them to address in the lore? What would you expect them to do with the Norn? The hypothetical universe where they actually care. I think they do care. I just think that what they care about with the Norn might not have been what many of the players cared about with the Norn, and so the interpretation we get is slightly different to what many of us were hoping for, maybe. And don't let me just presume to speak for a majority there. What would I want them to address in the lore? That giant hole up in the north that was just an abyssal black pit that seemed to go down to nothingness. I'd love them to address that. What would I want them to do with the Norn? I'd want to see them become really individualistic, nomadic heroes again. And I just want them to thicken up the culture. If I remember why I loved them so much in Eye of the North, it was they really felt like they had so much culture to them. I'd also love mechanically them to do something much more interesting with racial skills and the transforms, and sort of show that side of the Norn more too, because that is not touched on enough whatsoever. Not just mechanically, but even in story. You know, we do not have enough good descriptions of the experience of turning into a various animal and all of that kind of stuff. So that's what I'd like. Yeah, man, the Norn, there's a lot of good stuff that could come with the Norn. Come on, ArenaNet. And finally, we have a question from Chaos Gyro, who says, hey, AWP, I've been super happy to have watched your content since the middle of 2012, so supporting you with a little extra is the least I can do. Thank you very much, Chaos Gyro. A message to the viewers, if I may. If every one of the regular watchers, about 40k, gave as little as 50p a month, then WP would be sitting pretty well in line. Wait, is this? Should I leave this in the video? Just a thought. Anyway, question one. Here we go. Presumably, there is a universe out there where Lazarus wasn't a doppelganger, but was himself. Obviously, expansion 2 would have been much different as well. Do you think that would have been more interesting? Less? And question 2, do you think mounts are a sort of ticking time bomb for Guild Wars 2? They almost demand more time spent on larger maps, and while they may work for an expansion, it seems like they may make Living World episodes suffer either on quality or release time. Plus, unless expansion 3 onwards makes heavy use of mount lockouts, then the exploration of that content might be heavily compromised by Path of Fire ownership. Well done. Your question 2, my thoughts are completely aligned with yours. I'm extremely curious and concerned about that. They got episode 1 out in time, so that's good. It remains to be seen how big that map is, how fun and rewarding that is to explore. The live streams where they talked about the Griffin really concerned me, because they just did not seem to have done any forward thinking about that whatsoever. And that is a concern to all the mounts to varying extents. So we will see. I think Guild Wars is just becoming, now that mounts are there, a very different kind of game. And boy, you best hope you enjoy the kind of game that it's becoming. The other question about, okay, it actually was Lazarus. Would that have been more interesting? Probably more interesting to me. Probably less interesting to randoms who are just, you know, looking at picking up the game again and don't follow the lore that much. I really like the Massar. I would have liked a lot more about the Massar. I would have, you know, liked to see them push the Lazarus thing a lot more. But the idea of fighting a god and all of those things. Also, in terms of accelerating the big stage stories, the Elder Dragons, the gods, the big questions, it was probably better that Lazarus ended up being Balthazar instead. Just because we got to that subject material. Not that if he was Lazarus, we couldn't have got to it anyway in other methods. But, yeah, I mean, there's maybe even a world where both characters were a thing. Maybe Path of Fire still could have happened and it was Lazarus. It's just Balthazar arrived somewhere else and they never did the imposter thing. There's lots of different ways they could have done it. I do think the worst thing about the whole Season 3 thing and this imposter scenario was it was just a little bit too convoluted. It didn't seem to be planned out well enough, and I don't think it was telegraphed well enough. But they're learning, I guess. And so are we. So there you go, guys. That is the Super Q&A. Thanks very much for all the questions. There'll be another one of these coming up. If you do want to check them out, again, it's just the link in the top of the description. And hopefully I've got lots of entertaining and fun stuff for you all in the future. You're a trooper if you made it all the way through 1 hour and 20 minutes of this. And I will be back tomorrow for more good stuff around the game, and hopefully the devs will be having more news about Season 4's beginning also. So thanks, guys. Hopefully I didn't tick anyone off too much for some of these answers, or they didn't feel too weird or too personal. Let me know what you think. I'll be down in the comments, and I'll see you all very shortly. Have a great evening, guys.